Okay, so looking at surface area, we already doing this, but we just have to look at different shapes and make sure we include all the area of all the sides. So there's a rectangle. That's what we looked at. So we then have another rectangle added on, and we also have one more rectangle. So we have three different rectangles in this shape, but then there's sides you don't see. Okay. Now, if you look at the prism that I'm going to hold up here, it's easier to see this because I can turn it around. You have to use your spatial awareness to understand that on this rectangle, you have sides that are equal. You have a front that's the same as the back. You have the top, which is the same as the, and you have a left, which is the same as the right. So you have equal triangles. There's two top and bottom, two front and back, two left and right. Okay. How many different triangles are there? 1, 2, 3. There's three different rectangles. I said triangles, my bad. Three different rectangles, but there's two of them. Okay. There's three different sets, but two of each one. So what I see today is they're going to use the formula, and the formula is going to be only so good. You got to be smarter than the formula and understand what it means. Okay? Really what we're doing is we're finding a top and a bottom, a left and a right, a front and a back. If you keep that in your mind and understand that's what we're doing, you'll have no problem with the homework. Okay, but it's going to be a little bit tricky if you're just using the formula. So surface area means finding the area of all the surfaces, all the sides on the outside of the object. You're going to do this a ton in construction or when you're building or creating things. Okay. If we have one triangle that's 8 centimeters squared, another that's 4 centimeters squared, and one that's 2 centimeters squared, what we'll do at the very end is we'll just add them all up, and we're allowed to do that because of the units being the same. So that theme has been similar now for 3 classes. We have centimeter squared, centimeter squared, centimeter squared, centimeter squared. Only when we have the same units can we add them up. Okay. Definition of surface area, just to review, it's the area of the entire outer surface. Entire outer surface. Some of them, and we're going to see them today, will have specific formulas, where some of them you're just finding area of the shapes we've already found, and you're just adding them up. Okay? However, always square units. So centimeters squared, square inches, meters squared. It's always going to be squared. All right. Questions, comments, or concerns? Yep. That's completely correct, Tyson. Shame on the other class. 14 centimeters squared. No one said anything. Obviously, this is the best class. Those other ones are making the bad choices. So when you're doing the rectangular solid, you have to remember that there are 3 unique faces. Okay, 3 unique faces. Those unique faces are the top and the bottom. Those 2 are unique. You have a front and a back. And lastly, you have a left and a right. Okay, those are 3 unique faces for your rectangular prism. Basically, you have to have 3 sets of unique multiplications, right? 3 sets of unique multiplications. So on the formula, right over here, the first multiplication, length times width, that can be the top and the bottom, and that'll be in red. So if you look at the shape here, sorry to kind of jumble it all together, all right? The top and the bottom, that's going to be our 15 times 6 multiplication. Then the left and the right, or L times H, length and height, that's going to be the, in blue, 12 times 6 multiplication. Okay. So what's the other set of multiplication that's left over? What 2 numbers have not been multiplied? the 12 and the 15. The 12 and the 15 will be the front and the back. Okay, so there's definitely some sides you don't see. When you're using the formula, if you do that, you write down the formula. This is be your first line of work, writing down the formula. Put a number 1 there. The second line of work, you substitute in. Formula, substitute. And then the next line of work is probably the most important. What you need to do is you need to do bed mass, and line 3 is you need to write these multiplications with 3 separate numbers. So the first number, 180, that is 15 times 6 times 2. Okay, so 180 is from 15 times 6 times 2. The middle number is from 2 times 15 times 12. And the last number is 144, and that's from 2 times 6 times 12. So we have 3 numbers. You have to find those. If you're going to mess this thing up, it's because you were too lazy to find those numbers. Then at the end, you would add them all up, and you're going to have another solving line. So line 4 will be the last line solving them. So after you have 3 separate answers, then you simply add up those 3 questions, those 3 numbers. Okay? So this is one way of doing it. I never do this. Never, ever, ever, never, ever do I ever use this formula. Ever. Ever, never. Because there's no thinking involved, right? Just like barfing on the page. Once in a while, you're going to get a wrong answer. Actually, a lot of times, you're going to get a wrong answer. Because life's not perfect. So what I do, I'll show you what I do. I like to show the front and the back. Okay? So the front and the back. And for me, that would be 15 times 12. And if it's not 15 and 12, I'll just multiply 2 numbers together and fake it. Then I got the left and the right. And I'll do another set of multiplications. If it's not the right one, I'm okay with that. And then I'll do another set of multiplications. Well, what 2 numbers haven't multiplied yet? 15 times 6. And that will be the top and the bottom. Okay? Now, I'll be honest with you. A lot of times I don't write this stuff down that I just highlighted. I don't write that down. I just write down the multiplications. Okay? And so 15 times 12, I'd go to the old thing called a calculator because Mr. Barker's not as smart as he should be. 15 times 12, that's 180. 12 times 6, I'm going to guess a 72. And 15 times 6, I won't guess. I'll use my calculator as well. 90. Okay. Then I'll add them all up. 90 plus 72 plus 180. Whoops. Clear. 180 equals 342. 342. But that's not my final answer. Right? That's only 3 rectangles, and this figure has more than 3 sides. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I didn't double anything yet. Do you guys notice that? Right, Mr. Barker. Boo. So then I will times it by 2, and then I'll get my answer, 684 meters squared. 684 meters squared. Now, I just lied to you. I don't always do it that way. Sometimes, instead of multiplying by 2 at the very, very end, what I often will do is multiply it by 2 as I move along. So I'll show you what that work looks like. I will go 15 times 12 times 2. Go to my calculator, and that's 360. Then I will go 12 times 6 times 2. Go to my calculator, and that's 144. See what I'm doing? I'm doubling the sides as I go along. And my last one is what? 15 times 6 times 2, 180. So now I have all the sides. Now I'll add them up and get 684 meters squared. Okay? So you can double them at the very end like I did in the previous question, or you can double as you go along. Your choice. Okay. Both of these two are the most powerful. I never use the formula. I find every kid that uses the formula will never get the harder questions right. Always. But choices. Okay. Some people just need to start with the formula, and that's fine. You do what you feel you need to do. Okay. Any questions to start? Okay. Next question is about a dice, a cube. How many sides are there on a dice? What kind of dice are you playing with? A dice. 6. There's 6 sides on a dice. Right? Remember the numbers on a dice? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 sides on a dice. So the dice is a square, and there's 6 sides. So what we have is 1 square, okay, which is side length times side length. So 1 square is side length times side length, but since there's 6 of them that are equal, then we just simply times it by 6. And that's where they've gotten this formula from. So the formula is side length times 6 because there are 6 sides. Okay. However, what they want you to do is take this side times side, and you can use the exponent s squared. So you go 6 times s squared. So when you're doing your work, the first step is to write down your formula. SA equals 6s squared. Your second line is to substitute in. This question has the dice being 7 by 7 by 7. So it's 7 squared. That's the side length of 7. Doing bed mass, what do we do first? 6 times 7 or 7 times 2 or 7 times 7? Yeah, 7 squared is 7 times 7. So you're right. Okay, we're going to go 7 squared. So that'd be the third line of work. So just to remind you, 7 squared is 7 times 7. That's how we got the 49. Okay, 7 squared is 7 times 7. That's how we got the 49. Okay, that's the third line of work. Now we have to do one more piece of math, so we'll use one more line. 6 times 49, 294 centimeters squared. Okay, 94 centimeters squared. I'm going to fix up that horrible writing of mine. There we go. Any questions? Okay. Very similar to a rectangular pyramid. It's just that they're all rectangular prism, but they're all the same. That's why we can do a shortcut formula. Okay, next one. The cylinder. Cylinder gets a little mathy now with the formula, and you have to understand it. Okay, so the first thing to understand is that the surface area of a cylinder are 2 circles. If you look at this cylinder, these whites down all the desks, circle on top, circle on the bottom, or front and back, top, bottom, same thing. It doesn't change. Notice the height is still a height, right? So height, depth doesn't change if we rotate this sucker around. What's the area of a circle? Just remember, pi r squared. But there's not 1 pi r squared, there is 2 pi r squareds. And that's why for the 2 circles, we're going to get 2 pi r squared. Okay, so you can write that down. The barrel's the tricky one. Okay. So surface area is 2 pi r squared. Now, for the barrel, I'll use some scissors to help me show what the barrel actually is. Some of you might remember this from grade 8 or 7, or wherever we did this. Okay, so this round part's the barrel of the cylinder. If I unroll it, let's see what kind of shape it makes. That's a full one right there. So I'll cut it off straight. Oh, try and get straight as I can. What kind of shape is that? Perfect rectangle. Okay? So it's a perfect rectangle. This dimension right here is the height of the cylinder. And this side on the top and the bottom, that's what wraps around the cylinder. It makes what kind of shape? Yeah, it's the one that makes the circle. Okay? And the distance around the outside of the circle, right? It's the distance around, right? It wrapped all the way around. What is this distance that's wrapped all the way around? What do we call that in a circle? Circumference. So our formula for the barrel is the rectangle length times width. But the length and the width are the circumference times the height. Okay, length is the circumference times the height. The formula for circumference is 2 pi r. We've looked at that with the circumference of the circle times the height. So written as 2 pi r h. 2 pi r h. When you look at formula sheets, it's usually in this format: 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. But it doesn't have to be. Okay, you'll see down below they've switched this around. Right? They've switched those two around. But it's important to know what this represents. What does 2 pi r squared represent? Two circles? You're right. 2 pi r squared, 2 circles. So you need to understand that, because sometimes we take the lid off the cylinder, so there's not 2 circles, there's only 1. Right? So let's start using this formula then. How does this thing all work? Formula, substitute, solve. Formula, substitute, solve. Formula, solve. Good. You guys are starting to see. Okay, so you can see here they reversed it. They put 2 pi r h first. I'm okay with that. I'm just not in the habit of that because most don't do that. Okay, most have a 2 pi r squared first. Okay, just to remind you, or to help you out, right? This plus sign breaks the formula into 2 parts. Okay, that plus sign breaks into 2 parts. So what you have to do is find an answer to the first part, answer to the second part, then add them together. That's how BEDMAS is going to work. On this, looking at the formula, what's the radius of the cylinder? 3. What's the height of the cylinder? 9, or h equals 9. So on our shape here, okay, we have radius equals 3. That's at the very top. Right here, radius equals 3. Highlight that in yellow. Radius equals 3. Height equals 9. So we would substitute that in. And we would get 2 times pi times 3 times 9. Go to your calculator. Get your calculator out. Let's practice that. Calculator's handy. Practice it. 2 times pi times 3 times 9 equals. And 169.646. They rounded. That's okay. All right. Then you got to go to the back and do the work from the back. From the back, you multiply those numbers together. Oh, cool color. Look what that made. So for the back, you'd multiply 2 times pi times 3 times 3. Go ahead, do that on your calculator. And you get 56.55. Okay. Add them together. So now they have this first answer. I'll just go plus 169.65 equals 226.19, and they rounded 226.2. Okay. Final answer is 1 decimal. You'll be fine. Okay. Any questions? Notice that you have to find this number and this number then add them together. Really important you write those down. So for your work is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines in it. 4 lines of work. Okay, 4 lines of work. Any questions? All right. Okay. Now, this question was nice because they gave us the radius. What if they don't give us the radius? What do they give if they give us the diameter? What are we going to do? Tyson? Yeah, we would just find the radius by dividing the diameter by 2. Okay? So do watch for that. They do try and do that quite a bit. Let's look at this next one. We're going to say that the radius is 5 and the height is 3. Okay, so we're going to do some guided practice. You're going to try and do this one on your own as much as possible. Radius is 5, height is 3. What do we start by writing down? The formula. Start by writing down the formula. Go. Okay, so you should have written down here 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi rh. Okay. What's our next step? Substitute. Okay, so substitute in the numbers. So 2 times pi times r squared, or times blank, plus 2 times pi times r times h. Substitute in the numbers you know. Give it a guess. I'm going to show you in a second, but it's a great time now. Give it a guess. What would you multiply? So the first one, it should look like this. 2 times pi times 5 squared, or times 5 times 5. Okay, I wrote the long ways, times 5 times 5. And what's the second part? 2 times pi times 5 times 3. Did you get that one? Okay. So now what you want to do underneath, you want to multiply this together and write your answer below. Okay, multiply the front part, get your answer below, then multiply the second part and put your answer below. Okay, so do that. Multiply the first part, put your answer below. Multiply the second part, put your answer below. So the first part, I got 157.079. I wouldn't even worry about rounding right now. I just write down 3 decimals. Any questions with that? Yeah, Nick? Yeah, you could. Typically, you wouldn't till the very, very end, Nick. I'm not going to go crazy with your marks for rounding. Okay, so yeah, don't worry about that. Being able to do it is far more important. And what about the last one? What would you get? Good, 94.247. So at the end here, now I add them together. Okay, so now you add them together, and then you can round your final answer. And I'd go to 1 decimal. Okay, 251 units. Looks like I round to a whole number. Like I said, Mr. Barker's not going to be too crazy about the rounding. How come I wrote down units squared? What does that mean? Tyson? Yeah, I just wrote down a 5 and a 3. Okay, because I just wrote down a 5 and a 3 and didn't say whether it's meters or centimeters, you just write down units squared. Okay? All right. Questions, comments, or concerns? Last one thing, we've already talked about this. Okay. Again, if we're giving you the diameter. Okay, if here it says the diameter is 14, and you know it's 14 because the line goes all the way across. Okay, because you know it's 14, it's the diameter, goes all the way across. You would take the 14 and divide it by 2 to find the radius. Okay, divide by 2 to find the radius. Any questions? Okay, so your homework, there's a couple. One's a little bit challenging, the other ones are a little bit straightforward. Please pay attention while I announce it. So skip this next page. We're not doing cone and sphere yet. Skip the pyramids. Here's assignment 8. Okay, so assignment 8, you're doing number 2. Okay, you're doing number 2. Yeah, no. Okay, it's got 2 circled. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, absolutely. All right, the great P break. Part B, number 1. So part B, number 1, the toy box. So it's A and B, and then number 2. Okay. And I think there's, and then the next page, number 3. Okay, and then number 3. So number 3, don't worry about the spheres on the inside. It's the cylinder that holds the spheres that we're worried about. Okay. So that's it. You have 4 questions. Plenty of time to get them done, but you got to work at them. You got to ask for help when you need help. Begin. Good luck. Enjoy.